Nearly 900,000 without power after Hurricane Irma lashes Puerto Rico. Nearly 900,000 are without power after Hurricane Irma began battering Puerto Rico Wednesday after slamming the islands of Barbuda and Antigua and leaving at least 3 dead. The storm also left almost 50,000 without water, Puerto Rico's emergency management agency told the Associated Press. Overnight, the powerful Category 5 hurricane made a direct hit on the island of Barbuda, home to some 2,000 residents. French Overseas Minister Annick Girardin said that there have been 2 deaths on the islands of St. Bartholomew and St. Martin, local source BFM-TV reports. She added that 2 others were seriously injured. Barbuda and Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Browne confirmed that a 2-year-old child died while its family was trying to escape a damaged home during the storm, reports AP. Barbuda. The eye of Hurricane Irma passed over Barbuda around 2 a.m., knocking out the island's communication systems. The roof of the island's police station was ripped off, forcing officers to seek shelter in the fire station. Up to 90% of Barbuda's structures sustained damage. NBC 5 reports. Me and my family of 7, including an infant, had to shelter in a closet before the hurricane-force winds began, a woman who survived the storm in Barbuda told Antigua's ABS-TV radio. The roof had already been ripped off and we had to look for shelter. My main concern now is how we're going to survive after this. Browne says roads and telecommunications systems were destroyed and it will take months, if not years, to recover. Antigua. Barbuda's sister island was sideswiped by the hurricane but received minimal structural damage. According to the Antigua Met Service, 3 injuries have been reported. We in Antigua have weathered the most powerful hurricane ever to storm its way through the Caribbean. The forecast was that Antigua would be devastated, our infrastructure demolished, people killed and our economy destroyed, Prime Minister Gaston Browne said in a Facebook post. In the light of day, the picture is very different. In Antigua, no life has been lost. All the people survived. The guests in our hotels are all well. Even our animals were protected from this massive storm. The V.C. Bird International Airport was reopened Wednesday afternoon, St. Lucia News Online. Reports. St. Martin and St. Bart's roofs were ripped off and power was knocked out on both St. Martin and St. Bartholomew, known as St. Bart's. The fire station in St. Bart's was flooded with more than 3 feet of water, making it impossible for rescue vehicles to leave the station, and government headquarters on St. Martin was partially destroyed, the AP reports. St. Martin is home to 75,000 residents and St. Bart's, 9,200. Images posted on social media showed widespread flooding and destroyed homes. The island's Princess Juliana International Airport appears to have suffered major damages, according to images posted by the French weather observatory Chronos. French Interior Minister Gérard Collomb said St. Martin's 4 most solid buildings have been destroyed, according to Nation News.com. The European weather site Media Express posted a video Wednesday morning that showed wrecked boats and flooding in Philipsburg, the capital of the Dutch side of St. Martin, known as St. Martin. Dutch Interior Minister Ronald Plasterk said Wednesday the damage wreaked on St. Martin is enormous, noting that the damage inflicted after the storm made a direct hit on the island is so major that we don't yet have a full picture, also because contact is difficult at the moment. British Virgin Islands. The storm descended on the British Virgin Islands Wednesday afternoon, with wind gusts measuring 110 miles per hour. The AP reports. The islands are home to more than 20,000 residents. Richard Branson, the head of the Virgin Group, is riding out the storm on Necker Island and says he and friends have experienced a night of howling wind and rain as Hurricane Irma edges ever closer. The atmosphere is eerie but beautiful, he said. Anguilla. The tourist board told the Associated Press that the major resorts survived, but many private homes were damaged. The airport did not sustain any major damage, but it remains closed along with 2 ports. This is an ongoing report as the hurricane continues on its destructive trajectory, so check back frequently for more information. Source News, Weather.com. If you like video please subscribe to my channel. Floridians hit the highways, scrambled for scarce supplies and hammered plywood over windows as a monster hurricane made landfall in the Caribbean, where it was blamed for at least 4 deaths. Hurricane Irma, one of the most powerful Atlantic hurricanes, set a wild, wind-churned course toward Puerto Rico, with the U.S. mainland in its sights, likely over the weekend. Amid an overnight assault of battering waves and 185-mile-per-hour winds, 2 deaths were reported in French island territories, a third in Anguilla, a British territory, and a fourth in Barbuda, part of a tiny independent nation. In Florida, Governor Scott implored constituents to obey calls to flee the storm's path when the time came. "I cannot stress this enough. Do not ignore evacuation orders," Scott said at a news briefing as the storm began lashing Puerto Rico with rain, still on track for the U.S. mainland. "If you are told to evacuate, don't wait, get out quickly." In warning of the dangers, the governor invoked Hurricane Andrew, which devastated Florida a quarter of a century ago, causing massive destruction and killing nearly 50 people in the state. "I want everybody to understand the importance of this. This is bigger than Andrew," Scott told ABC News. President Trump declared states of emergency in Florida, Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Florida began activating its National Guard, with 7,000 members told to report for duty Friday. In Fort Myers, in coastal southwestern Florida, Stephanie Madison waited in line at a gas station, where she said she had been for 25 minutes. "I swear, it's like everyone is in a hurry to get this thing over with, like, just come on, Irma, and then leave us alone," said Madison, 47. She experienced Hurricane Wilma in 2005, but Irma's got more punch, from what they're saying. There was a run on supplies, including bananas and batteries. Anthony Bonor, a bread company distributor, predicted that the 28 tracks of bread he was delivering to a picked-over Walmart in Coral Cove, outside Fort Myers, would go fast. "It's kind of like I'm the candy man wherever I show up," he said. "Bread and water are always the first to go. Stand here for 15 minutes. All of this will be gone." A state of emergency was declared earlier for all 67 Florida counties. On Wednesday, South Carolina followed suit, with Gov. Henry McMaster urging the public to not leave storm preparations to the last moment. As he did while Hurricane Harvey pounded Texas late last month, Trump unleashed tweets about the storm's strength. "Hurricane looks like the largest ever recorded in the Atlantic," he wrote Wednesday morning on Twitter. The president also said his team was ready in Florida, adding, "No rest for the weary." Later, heading into a meeting with congressional leaders, he described the storm as something that could be not good, "Believe me, not good." The National Hurricane Center said the storm was one of the 5 most powerful Atlantic hurricanes in the last 80 years and the strongest Atlantic storm on record outside the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea. Satellite imagery of the enormous storm inspired fear and awe. The Hurricane Center in Miami described a vast swirling mass, with hurricane-force winds extending 50 miles from the storm center. The hurricane's force was such that it was detected by earthquake measuring equipment on islands it passed, said Stephen Hicks, a seismologist at Britain's University of Southampton. Before dawn Wednesday, the tiny Caribbean nation of Antigua and Barbuda was pummeled by wind and rain as the Category 5 storm passed almost directly above the islands, tearing off roofs, uprooting trees and triggering floods. Many people sought safety in government shelters as the winds turned storm-borne debris into missiles. At first, Prime Minister Gaston Browne tweeted thanks that his nation had been spared the worst. But then came grim word of almost all houses on Barbuda destroyed, and a death. Irma also roared through the French island territories of St. Martin and St. Bartholomew, battering them with wind and water that smashed buildings and toppled trees. It was there that 2 deaths were reported by the French Overseas Territories Minister, Annick Girardin. She also said 2 people were seriously injured. Dutch authorities were keeping an anxious eye on St. Martin, Netherlands territory that shares an island with St. Martin, after the storm disrupted communications and caused heavy damage. In the early afternoon, the eye passed over the British Virgin Islands with winds gusting at 110 miles per hour, the National Hurricane Center reported. Celebrity tycoon Richard Branson, founder of the Virgin Group, owns a small private island in the chain, and blogged beforehand that he and a group of friends would be seeking shelter in a concrete wine cellar. 6 southern islands and the Bahamas were under evacuation orders. Prime Minister Hubert Minnis said, with people being flown to the capital, Nassau. In Puerto Rico, lashed by the storm's leading edge, people hunkered down as the hurricane menaced the U.S. territory, with the height of winds and rain expected later Wednesday. Gov. Ricardo Roslo said the storm's danger was like nothing we've ever seen. As the hurricane closed in, the world's second-largest radio telescope, at Puerto Rico's Arecibo Observatory, suspended operations, its operators announced on Twitter. With Puerto Rico's infrastructure already tottering, islanders were bracing for a loss of power that could last for weeks or even months. In the low-lying Florida Keys, where many people are accustomed to riding out hurricanes, mandatory evacuation orders were in effect for visitors and were extended to residents for later Wednesday, a complicated undertaking that was to include airlifting hospital patients. Tourist idols came to an abrupt halt as hotels shut down and the Key West airport was stopping operations Wednesday, later pushed back to Thursday so more flights could depart. Residents, with a few more hours grace to get out, boarded up homes and businesses, and secured their boats. There's only one highway to the mainland, U.S., Route 1, and it was choked with traffic. Gasoline became harder to find. The governor said that by Wednesday afternoon, about 25,000 people had fled the Florida Keys. Martin Centerfit, the top disaster management specialist for Monroe County, which encompasses the Keys, said that unlike in previous hurricanes, authorities weren't encountering many recalcitrant holdouts against evacuating. "I think the general consensus across the state is that this is a big event," he said. With the storm bearing down, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission said it was getting ready to shut down 2 Florida nuclear plants that could be in the hurricane's path, the Turkey Point plant south of Miami, and the St. Lucie plant on the state's east coast. In Miami-Dade County, authorities urged people to stock up on enough food and water to last 3 days, and encouraged people in low-lying areas to leave voluntarily. Schools were closed. Storm monitors reached back nearly a century to provide comparisons, with the Weather Service likening Irma's destructive power to that of Hurricane San Felipe, which killed nearly 3,000 people in Puerto Rico, Florida and the island of Guadeloupe in 1928. Source News, Latums.com. If you like video, please subscribe to my channel.